impression the game you get out with what you put into it. It's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Shawnee Buckley. To do that to Tomas O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word go today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Curry. Curry leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it high.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.
Yes, indeed. No sympathy in this game for anyone. A familiar staple of Treaty Talk. We're very welcome along to episode 282. Tom Clancy, myself, joined, of course, as ever by John Keogh. John, how's things?
All's good with me, Tom, now. All's good.
Yeah, we'd be hoping for maybe a little bit more to spare than a last-minute winner from our centre-back this come Sunday afternoon. But nevertheless, given the way the Munster Championship is unfolding, we take it at this moment with open arms.
Yeah, absolutely, Tom. It's the gift that keeps on giving, the Munster Hurling Championship yet again. You know, okay, we were talking last week about maybe two tight games, maybe expecting something from Tipperary that we just didn't fully see. You know, we saw a good bit in the first half where they kept coming back against Cork, led for a little bit, led in the early stages and looked very good early on after the early goal. But, you know, Cork, we asked questions of Cork last week, would they be able to back it up? They certainly did in the second half. You know, and we'll be full of confidence now, albeit, you know, there's a good few scenarios that could still see the end of Cork season. The other game, and I know we'll talk plenty about Waterford in a bit, I just thought it was a brilliant game from start to finish. You know, Waterford's resilience to keep coming back against Clare, having conceded so many goals and a good few of them soft as well, but kept coming back. And, you know, a bit of controversy at the end always helps matters, but it may not, you know, help the Waterford mood and camp heading into Sunday, coming up to Limerick. But, you know, it was a cracking game, and Waterford really backing up their form with the win over Cork, and, you know, very unlucky obviously to be pegged back by Tipperary late on as well. Could have easily beaten Clare, you know, and, you know, it just sets up Sunday for me massively now. Sets up such a, you know, we hear of every weekend with the Premier League, Tom, of Super Sunday. Well, I don't think there's too many Super Sundays that'll come close to what we're going to see in the two Gaelic rounds on Sunday.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose we'll have a slight eye on other things in Thurles, but I suppose Limerick, you mentioned permutations there. Limerick know the scenario, you win and it's a Munster final. It's the most straightforward one you can get, but easier said than done now against, I suppose, a rejuvenated looking Waterford team. Before, I suppose, John, we look at that game. You mentioned the Tipperary game, and Tipperary and Cork, that is, last weekend. Like, Cork putting up, is it 428, is it, or 430? Sorry, 430, I think, wasn't it? Like, they're putting up phenomenal totals. 328 against Limerick, 326, I think, against Clare. You know, now they were a bit lower now against Waterford first time out, but like, it's phenomenal scoring by any means. But from a defensive point of view, like in hurling as general, is it very, very hard to keep scores down, to defend? You know, I've heard Anthony Daly on his own podcast talking about, like, if you kept your man back in the day, his day, which is their 90s, if you kept your man to maybe a point or two, you'd be going well. If you conceded anything more than that, you'd be, I suppose, cleaned, maybe is the word. You know, it's like, geez, that was a bad day out if you conceded 3 or 4 scores to one player. But like, we've Alan Connolly scoring 3-1, with James Flanagan 3-3, all from play last few weeks. We've, you know, big individual totals. Even Kingston came on, he'd get 4 points. We've seen Adam English do that. These are just some that are just coming to my head right now. Like, big totals, maybe the art of man marking and really stifling players has gone. It's all about systems and whatever. But like, defending, is it a dying art in hurling, do you think?
No, it's a different art, Tom, is what I'd call it. You have a very, very different game from me growing up watching hurling in the 90s. It was an amazing game back then, but you look back at it now and you see, comparing with modern hurling, it's chalk and cheese. And defending coming into that, like, you see Munster Championship games of 14 points to 12 or 13, no hope of a goal. There's also the added thing of players can't get away with what they may have gotten used to back in the day either.
Well, the
And
black card as well maybe is helping the goal total as well.
even before that came in, Tom, even before the advent of that, the cards coming in, the red and the yellow and red cards certainly put a stop to, and the long suspensions as well. You have a very, very different game. Just on the art of defending, no, you still see some outstanding defenders, but you're seeing forwards, like if you are using Cork as an example, as you said, there's never been an issue with Cork up front. They've always had talent up front. They've always had scorers up front. Alan Connolly is just the latest cab off the rank. Seamus Harnedy is still putting up massive scores. Patrick Horgan, obviously the same. Shane Barrett has stepped things up even further this year from his undoubted talent. He's now starting to deliver more and more consistently from his point of view. But Cork's question marks will still remain defensively. They did concede 326 at home to Clare, a huge total against Limerick as well in an epic game. Their problem has never been, what they can put over the bar and into the net. It's been what they can hold out. It will always be Cork's issues. Give us the nature of the talent of the hurlers they have. They seem to have added a bit of steel. They could have wilted completely after that defeat to Waterford first up. It really could have been that they didn't. They put in a good performance against Clare, albeit in defeat. And then, of course, they did that epic win over Limerick and a relatively handy win over Tipperary. But I'll say it again, Tom, you could have scenarios there, as good as it's been for Cork in the last two games. Could they be left through those very tight defeats that they had against Waterford and Clare? And, it's cutthroat in Munster. It's going to be cutthroat in Leinster by the looks of things this year as well.
Yeah,
it just adds up to another fantastic hurling championship.
Yeah. We'll look back on I suppose a couple of older games between Limerick and Waterford in a few minutes, but maybe we'll just come to the meat and bones of the weekend's action. 4:00, obviously Sunday, as we're saying there, the two Gaelic rounds. I'd say tickets still available, but probably selling very, very quickly. So I suppose if people want to get out there and experience this, and look, it could very easily be the end of Limerick's run as 5 in a row Munster champions, and obviously 4 in a row All-Ireland champions. It could very conceivably come to that. But just talk to me about Waterford, John. I mean, what are we to expect? They conceded 4 goals last week to Clare. They gave up a lot of goal chances, but nevertheless, they did not throw in the towel. And it's probably a Davy Fitz thing, really, as much as anything. That's just always his teams have had that in them at any code or any level that he's been in charge of a team. They very rarely roll over. But, I suppose their concession rate, how they maybe didn't close out the game, as it were, when they had the draw, which would have been very favourable for them. They let, I suppose, Clare get the last attack and last couple of goals at it. What are we going to expect from Waterford this Sunday?
I think more of the same, Tom. They've been very impressive for me. Really good in that win over Cork. Caught a lot of people, pretty much everyone off guard. They've been completely written off after what was a very poor league. They went into the Tipperary game. They were very disappointed with the free given to level the game late on. A couple of questionable calls going against them, and that they were last time out against Clare last weekend. They gave it everything. The big worry for Waterford, and obviously we're not in the know of what's going on this week down there. Obviously, we're not in the know what's going on in Limerick this week either. But you'd have to imagine that if they leave that kind of space in their full back line against Limerick, the likes of Aaron Gillan, who's in top form anyway, Shamie Flanagan after the Cork game, what a difference one game that makes, taking off against Clare first day out, didn't make an appearance against Tipperary, and then he's, on absolute fire against Cork down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. So if Waterford leave that kind of space in behind for Aaron Gillan and Seamus Flanagan, the result will be fairly conclusive, I'd say. I don't see that happening. I think they'll know, Tom, that they're going to have to maybe sacrifice how impressive they've been up front. Now, from a technical point of view, like Waterford aren't playing with as many players behind the ball or in defence, or certainly not flooding the defence like they used to, certainly from what I've seen so far this year. Yeah. But there are times, and there was plenty of times in that Clare game, as good as the game was, where they were hitting aimless ball inside, where Clare had 2 spare men back there. And it was a kind of thankless task for Kevin Mahoney and Desi Hutchison, who were inside a lot. You had Stephen Bennett roaming a fair bit as well. So there is that style of, and every team is at that, but there was a good bit of aimless ball. One of the big things for Waterford, Tom, when Tyke de Burke is in the form he's in, Waterford are a very, very good team, and Tyke de Burke has been outstanding this season so far. So I certainly can't see Waterford being as open as they were. I mean, how often do you see in modern hurling now when you see a long ball delivered inside and the likes of David Fisher, it could be anyone, ghosting in, and all Shane O'Donnell had to do was make sure his marker didn't get near the ball. And Dave Fitzgerald had the easiest of finishes you'll get in intercounty hurling. Very rare to see any team do that. Very, very rare to see a Davy Fitzgerald side have that much space left in behind. So don't see that happening. Waterford will just be looking for more of the same outside of that. They're putting up big scores. They're getting value off their bench. The likes of Jamie Barnes, evergreen at the moment. It looks to me like Stephen Bennett's getting 50, 60 minutes, and then he's been whipped off no matter how well he's playing. Shane Bennett came on off the bench, was very, very influential. They do have players that are making an impact when they come on. Was it Padraig Fitzgerald came on, got 2 wonder scores as well? I think it's Padraig from Kilrasanti. I mean, 2 scores he got. You're coming in cold into a game, albeit on a warm day, and you see the first ball you get, you put it over from the sideline. Second ball you get just a few yards inside where you put the other one off, or put the other one over and off your other side, off your left side as well. Davy's getting a response out of him, and that's the big danger for Limerick this weekend. Is forget about Waterford's history at the 2 Gaelic grounds, and indeed against Limerick in recent years. That can all change in an instant, Tom, as we both know. And if Limerick are slightly off, if they don't have a good start, like we've seen 2 out of the 3 games this year where they haven't, if you could argue really all 3, they haven't got fire from early doors. If Limerick have a very poor start like they did against Cork, you could be hitting a scenario where they're up against it again. And I'll say it again, Tom, there's only so many times you can go to the well as a Limerick player, Limerick management, and giving teams that kind of advantage.
Yeah, just looking at Waterford's scores from last week, you mentioned Padraig Fitzgerald there coming in, chipping in with 2. They had 13 different scores, and all 13 of them scored from play. Now I know Desi Hutchinson, I think he got 5 frees, and just looking at it here, Tyke de Burke scored a free, and obviously Shane Bennett got that late goal. I mean, there was a time maybe where Aston Gleeson was expected to ship a lot of that burden, but like 13 different scores. Now I know sometimes games they can just develop that way, but that's a good sign of maybe where Waterford are at, that it isn't just get the ball to Desi and let him weave a bit of magic, or it isn't get Stephen or Shane Bennett on it. There's a few more strings to their bow maybe than we had seen in the last couple of years.
No, 100% there is. They're getting value off the bench, Tom, and I'll repeat that point, because so many of their players are coming on and making impacts, which was never really the case for Waterford. Not probably being a bit hard saying that, but they weren't getting enough value off the bench. And you add that to the likes, and I repeat, Jamie Byrne, over a 10-year period, if not longer, has just been such a good hurler for Waterford. I'd argue one of their best, certainly in my lifetime anyway. He's just been so consistent. And, he's been a 7 out of 10 performer pretty much every game, but at a minimum, so they are getting that greater spread. Having Stephen Bennett off the frees, I think it's freed him up a bit. I certainly hadn't seen Desi Hutchinson take frees up until, this year, and it hasn't taken away from his game, I don't think. I mentioned Kevin Mahoney there. He's popping up with a couple of scores. I think Kieran Bennett even got one from distance the last day as well. Tyke de Burke has scored, as you said. They've the likes of Jack Prendergast, Jack Fagan can all chip in with scores. Mikey Kiley has had a very disciplined year, where a bit ill-disciplined last year. We both saw him in close quarters during his Fitzgibbon Cup time at Limerick. We both know how good he can be on his day as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they have all these players. They've always had these players. But are you getting them now in a more organised fashion? Certainly. It's Davy's second year with this group as Waterford manager. He knows them in and out now, where he wouldn't have maybe known exactly what makes them tick. He certainly does now, and he's getting a tune from them. And that's what it's all about, Tom. No pundit tipped Waterford to come out of Munster this year. They're going into the lines then, obviously, of the 2 Gaelic grounds where Limerick don't lose too many games, and it's a big uphill challenge. But there's certainly plenty of danger in a team coming to Limerick with effectively nothing to lose, because if Waterford don't win, if it's a draw, they have a chance, and whatever else about that. But Waterford are coming to Limerick to win, and they do have the tools in the arsenal to maybe come away with that victory. And if again, I'll repeat it, if Limerick are a little bit off and Waterford get a sniff of it, Tom, they have the players to execute scores from all angles now, where, as you said, there is no Ozzie Gleeson to rely on now, and it may have, not disparaging Ozzie for 1 second, because he's a gifted hurler, with talents that we haven't seen of maybe before he came onto the scene, certainly to the level he can get to. But maybe Waterford are a more rounded team. I said that about Clare earlier in the year. Clare certainly look a more rounded team without the reliance or the over-reliance of Tony Kelly. I know he's coming off the bench and chipping in, but Clare look a more rounded, grounded team without having to look for Tony. They're not looking for Tony Kelly, is my point. Waterford aren't looking for Ozzie Gleeson.
They're just playing. They're playing off the cuff, or more naturally, rather than
more off the cuff within their structure, which isn't as rigid as it was either. And maybe that's why they're a bit more open in the back, as I said. But they certainly have the tools to cause Limerick problems on Sunday. And from a Limerick perspective, we were hoping they have an off day. But if they get a whiff, as I said, Tom, it could spell a bit of danger.
Yeah, we'll talk about Limerick in a second, but I suppose we've alluded to enough now, the permutations. Now I'll just bring them up on screen here. Now anyone listening and not watching, you'll have to bear with us, but this is thankfully done by Dennis Hurley from the Echo, so credit to him for this. A lot of work has gone into it, but I suppose at the moment on the centre of our screen there at the top, Limerick are still top. Yeah, I don't know why he's 6 points in there, but sorry, I think that's slightly a miss there. But anyway, Limerick are top. So I suppose if Limerick and Clare win, it will be a Limerick-Clare Munster final, and that will put Cork through. If Clare and Waterford, are to win, that will put Limerick out. And I suppose from a Limerick point of view, we have to look at it, John. If Limerick are to be beaten on Sunday, I suppose the only way back in is with a Tipperary win, and I suppose that's not overly likely. Now, I suppose we went into the exact same venue last 12 months ago in round 4. Yourself and myself were probably sitting beside each other in the Gaelic grounds, thinking that Limerick, even if they beat Cork, which they did by a point, that would put Limerick just about through, to sneak into third place and all the rest of it. And then suddenly Waterford upset the apple cart. So Tipperary, there's talks of a number of their senior players, maybe it's their last dance, as it were. Now they're obviously out of the championship. They have to fulfill this fixture. Is there a possibility that we could see a performance from Tipperary, or is it just maybe that this one will also prove beyond them?
From what we've seen, Tom, and we can only go on that, you wouldn't expect to see something from Tipperary. Of course, there's a possibility, given the standard of player that these players have been, the likes of Noel McGrath, the likes of Ronan Maher, Cahill Barrett et al. They've been phenomenal hurlers, multiple All-Ireland winners as well, of course. You can't ever count them out. You're probably going to see the Banner Maher finish up his Tipperary career if he comes off the bench as well, which he may or may not do. The reality is, of course, it's Munster Championship. Of course, it's possible. You just at the moment, given what Clare have backing them and what's at stake for Clare, there was nothing at stake for Waterford last year, but there is something at stake for Clare. Waterford, there was plenty at stake for Tipperary, and they couldn't manage it against. And Waterford probably have since then have come off the back of that in Munster anyway, forgetting about the league, with a bit of confidence. So, Tipperary, I don't know. I haven't heard too much in the ways of they're not going to move away from Liam Cahill, I don't think, Tom. And it's more a case of, I'd say you'll see a massive overhaul in players. And if that is the case, as you said, it is the last dance for a lot of these players. Of course, they're capable of it, Tom. Again, like I said with Cork, Tipperary always have forwards that can cause any team damage. You're seeing Mark Keogh getting a regular goal this year, and he's capable of scoring goals. We know Jake Morris can do it. We know Jason Ford can do it. They've plenty of talent in there. It's again at the back is where they seem to be, around the middle where they seem to be struggling that bit more. But yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't ever, I was confident that Tipperary would give more to Cork. And even in the first half, you're thinking there's a game on here. And of course, the second half was a complete blitzkrieg.
Yeah,
but
that's a bit of a trend, John, is it, with Tipperary? We've seen it now. It's not a Liam Cahill only problem. It was obviously there when under Liam Sheedy as well. That this fade out or whatever kind of bit of wording we want to put in it. They're well capable of matching teams beyond 35, 40 minutes. But we saw it against Limerick. They were kind of in the game just before half-time. The margin, swelled a bit. And then once Limerick got rolling in the second half, they had absolutely no answer. And it was carbon copy, if you like, albeit the Cork really punished them more on the scoreboard in terms of, the green flags and all that. But, it's probably more a question for Tipperary people, but it's hard to put your finger on what that is. Why are they capable of only matching teams for, 50-60% of the contest, when obviously you want them to be there for 65 minutes, at least 70 minutes,
Yeah, it's the imponderable, Tom. We can't answer that. If Tipperary can't figure it out and they're seeing all the sessions and they have all the data and in front of them, we're certainly not going to be able to figure it out. It is tricky, Tom. It's all these things are cyclical. We are going to come to a stage where Limerick will stop winning, and it could come this Sunday as well. Of course, you just don't know on any given day. There's been, again, I'll go back to so many of these Tipperary players, Tom, have given so much over such a long period of time. Sometimes the well runs dry, and sometimes it can be that simple where just new blood is needed. And, maybe the talent isn't there, what was there before. We've seen good underage teams. We see Tip winning a minor Munster title, but those players are 3-4 years away from making whatever impact they may make at senior level, if not more, given their age profile, obviously at 15, 16, 17 now. Tip under 20s have looked good this year from what we've seen, and we certainly saw them in McNeville Park against Limerick and played very, very well in patches. You've seen Nina CBS win a Harty this year, their first ever.
Well, they won the Munster minor only Monday just gone as well.
Exactly, yeah. And they've also won the Dean Ryan this year, Nina CBS. So there's a conveyor belt of talent on the way, but there was also a conveyor belt of talent when Liam Cahill was the 21s and 20s manager. A couple of All-Irelands in there as well. So certainly it does take time, Tom, for those players to come through, and Liam Cahill probably is the best man to bring those players through, just like Pat Ryan was with Cork, and maybe Cork finally are in the process of seeing some benefit of them, but these players are starting to believe in their actual ability and, believing in what they can do, and what they've been told over the last number of years is coming to fruition. But for Tipperary, Tom, they're a very, very proud hurling and GAA county in general. It's been a bad couple of years. They had, again, we've mentioned it, that Tipperary Waterford game last year. Tip needed a win to make a Munster final, Tom, and they were well fancied, and maybe they took the foot off the pedal. And it's, we maybe the warning signs were there. It's very hard to look at league form at times, but the manner of which Tipperary's second half performance against Clare in the National Hurling League semi-final this year, where they did capitulate yet again in the second half of a game, maybe the telltale signs were already there before the Munster Championship even started, But look, we to be honest, is these things are cyclical, Tom. You're seeing we didn't have a huge amount of underage success from winning trophies with Limerick up until the 2015 21s, and then to win the 21s in 2017 again, and all these players coming through since then. We've won Munster minors, we've won Munster under 20s and 21s, but since 2017 there's been no All-Ireland.
In hindsight, Jan, what Limerick did maybe different to Tipperary, and I wouldn't have the exact numbers on it, but I think Limerick maybe kind of bit the bullet in 2017 in terms of they decided to go with Kyle Hayes and Grod Hegarty, these guys who were still, newish to intercounty, and Darragh O'Donovan, and there was still obviously a sprinkling of the kind of the more senior guys, but I suppose they threw a lot of them in at the deep end that season. Obviously, even Aaron Gallan, I think, was on the bench for came on actually against Clare in the Munster game. Well. Hadn't played a league game.
It was this Fitzgibbon Cup form that brought in.
Yeah, but like they kind of just bit the bullet a bit. Whereas maybe Tipperary were they leaned a bit too much. Hindsight, as I'm kind of saying, is 2020, and I'm not trying to be too critical of them, but they kind of leaned on the older guys and said maybe these newer guys, Jake Morris's vintage, shall we say, maybe they're just not up to it yet. But whereas what Limerick did was said, well, we haven't had success, so let's see, can these lads have success? And I suppose it's probably easier for Limerick to do it because that lack of success, where Tipperary had been contesting All-Ireland, so it's very hard to go away from the tried and trusted. But I suppose they're probably suffering a little bit for that now, because there's probably a lack of real championship experience for guys that are maybe in a prime age, maybe between 22 and 25 or 6. Maybe that, as they look back at it and say, well, maybe we should have maybe trusted the younger guys a bit sooner,
Yeah, that's fair, Tom. But they have introduced players. You've likes of Conor Bowe, Rhys Shelley played against Limerick last year in goals and was in with UL. Obviously, Barry Hogan's got the number one spot in there, all Munster Championship. Dara Stakelum's a player, Sean Keneally's a player, Owen Connolly. These are all guys now that are actually 20, 19, 20, 21 years of age, who will be all the better for this year, as it turns out, from their point of view. Like Valentine and still young enough, it's the older vintage, as you mentioned, Tom. The problem is they're still having to go back to them, and whether the crop that won those All-Irelands can make that step up finally for Tipperary, only time will tell. But you're looking at players that just haven't done it, Tom, and that's the harsh, cold truth of it. Last bit of silverware for Tipperary at senior level was 2019 All-Ireland, and they were heavily beaten by Limerick in the Munster final. Limerick obviously lost out to Kilkenny, and a red card in the All-Ireland final maybe turned the game in Tip's favour. But you had a lot of those players that were playing in 19 still involved at the moment. And the reality is, Tom, again, I'll say it is cyclical. They may, the reality of throwing too many in at once can hurt the team as well. Say Brian O'Mara is another one who again, we saw captain UL for a few years, has played very well in fits and starts. But they've had a fair few injury problems as well, Tom. Was it their wing back against Limerick in the league against down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, out for the year again, Gerard Ryan, and was having a very good league. Him and Conor Bowe at wing back were kind of cementing places as the league went on. To lose a player like that, it's tough, but there's so many things, so many factors add up to what goes out, what 15 and what 20 makes a day, on game day, what makes a panel on game day. And for whatever reason, Tom, again, we're not going to figure it out here, but Tipperary haven't got up to the levels that, let's be honest, they would expect a proud hurling county. And they haven't just hit the levels that Tipperary people, the Tipperary public at large would expect. And if it doesn't happen, I don't know what the wherewithals would tip. I said it earlier, I haven't certainly heard any murmurings of Liam Cahill's position being under threat. There's plenty I'd say would want that job in Tipperary. I've already mentioned Brendan Cummins, who's waiting in the wings with the 20s. James Woodlock, an ex-Tip player as well, of course. Fine midfielder along with Shane McGrath back in the day, in the halcyon days of Liam Sheedy's time in charge of Tipperary. He was over the minor team that gained success in the Munster minor final on Monday as well. So, I wouldn't be, it's not all doom and gloom and Tip. It's been a couple of tough years at senior, but at 20s at minor, certainly they look like they have a few stars coming through. Not to name check, you'd hate to call out in players, but certainly a guy we've seen plenty of this year with Nina CBS and Tips 20s, Darren McCarthy. Absolutely outstanding talent. But Tipperary have had talent all the way through. It's all now for them. Yeah, they may have to they may sacrifice a couple of All-Irelands and Munsters to get 4 or 5 that will come straight into the senior team the next year or two, and that will mean more to Tipperary than any minor under 20 title. But
yeah, well, that's plenty about Tip. I can hear people screaming down there that this is treaty talk. So we'll revert now back to the big one. But before, I suppose, just to reiterate, Limerick people are probably looking for an insurance policy, and that would be, of course, Tipperary beating Clare, a result that would essentially put Limerick through. Tipperary haven't won a championship game in hurling since 2019, so they'll have to right that one wrong for Limerick to have that insurance policy. But John, back to the big one on Shannon's side. I think our good friend Luke Liddy had the story first the other day. Mike Casey and Dara O'Donovan appear to be back and look to be very much in contention. This is good news for Limerick, naturally, but particularly in the case of Mike Casey. He only played 5 minutes against Clare in Ennis. And then obviously we saw a similar amount of time, or maybe a bit longer, for Sean Finn before he hobbled out of the Cork game. So probably likely to come straight in, you'd feel, if they feel he has the majority of a 70-minute performance in him.
That all depends, Tom, on what training load he can get through this week. I think listening to the clip,
it was a hamstring complaint, wasn't it?
It was. He did a hamstring. Yeah. I don't know is the truth. Limerick have been very consistent under John Kiley with this. If the players don't train properly, fully in that week or even the week before, they'll need to be 110% right, Tom. They don't bring injured players in. Usually anyway, unless this is, DEFCON 5 scenario. which I don't think it is. Same for Darragh O'Donovan. I can't see Darragh O'Donovan starting unless he's 1,000% fit. I know it's a stupid number to say, but if John Kiley's saying that they're close, Tom, they're close. I don't see any other way of that. He's not going to mince with his words when it comes to that. And if they're not, Tom, they're not. You know, I wouldn't be Limerick had trust in their panel. I thought Fergal O'Connor, I said it last week, I thought he was, after a nervy start against Cork, I think he had a fine game for a guy who was making his championship debut in what was such a crunch and tight game. Came out with very good ball, one very good ball on the ground, stopped Cork players getting the ball into hand, and came out with a couple of, I think he won a late free as well. So I'd have no fears of Fergal O'Connor if that ends up being the case. Of course, a guy like Mike Casey, if he's fully fit against Waterford, you'd love to have him, and the same with Darragh, of course you would. But you know, it will always be with this management team, Tom, next man up mentality, and that's the way the squad works. You know, they'll have full trust in whoever 15 takes to the field from the start on Sunday at 4:00. But I will say this: if the two of them are back fully fit, it's a huge boost for Limerick. Of course it is.
Yeah. I suppose the thing I'd like to see maybe in terms of like Limerick get their matchups right, Sean Finn, like he's always had a great, I suppose, win over Desi Hutchinson. I think he's majority of the time has come out on top in that battle. Now I suppose Desi was a bit late to intercounty hurling, as it were, due to his soccer exploits. But you know, that's a matchup now that Limerick are obviously going to be missing. So it'd be interesting to see what way they approach that. Obviously, if Mike Casey's fit, you'd think he might do that, but I don't know, maybe.
I can tell you this, sorry to cut across it, Tom. Limerick won't be focusing on Waterford and what Waterford will bring. They will.
Yeah.
It's an old mantra, but it's one they'll stay true to. If they weren't going to man-mark Tony Kelly in Munster finals, they're certainly not going to have a big plan for Desi Hutchinson. It could be Dan Morrissey. It could be Mike Casey. You said it could be
Limerick play more of a zonal sort of.
It will be whoever's closest to him, Tom. They won't detail, I don't think. Like, I certainly remember Sean Finn following Tony Kelly, I'd say out 30, 40 yards in the 22 Munster final. That was as far as it went.
I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, and if you're going any further, Tony, I'll see you for a chat later. Yeah. It will be Limerick focusing on themselves, Tom. And, you know, albeit in defeat against Cork, you know, we mentioned this last week as well. I don't think Limerick will be overly worried about, you know, about how the game went. Of course, they want to win every game, Tom, but Limerick come into Sunday very much with fate in their own hands, you know, and Limerick win or draw, it's a Munster final. You know, I think I'm right in saying that. You know, so like that wasn't the scenario a year ago, like where they were just coming off a draw with Tipperary. You know, third place was the way form was going. Third place was where Limerick looked to be. You know, that was their best case scenario for a large part of that Super Sunday. In the end, they ended up in the Munster final and won it against Clare. So there's plenty of peaks and troughs to come within 70 odd minutes of hurling on Sunday in Thurles and in Limerick. But from Limerick's point of view, they'll want to address the first half an hour, Tom, first 35 minutes. No question about that. Not from an attacking point of view, but certainly from a defensive point of view. You know, they won't ever want to be left that wide open again. It's happened twice in the space of 3 years now, 21 now and 24, where teams that went direct, funnily enough, at the same ends in Cork as well, teams that went very, very direct against them, got joy. There's a lot of gambling involved in it. Yeah. You know, there is a lot of gambling involved in it, but like if you can get the ball over Limerick's half back line, there may be some success. And that's what I've no doubt Davy Fitz will be focusing on, that exact thing. He'll go short first, Sean O'Brien to his full back, and then it'll be cannons down the middle of the park, and they'll try and break off that. I'm sure Limerick, if anything, will have a plan for that, Tom, rather than man marking anyone. It's just how to adjust to that if that's something they see. Outside of that, Limerick will be, you know, if you're looking outside of that, former Kyle Hayes has been outstanding. Dan Morrissey, even though under severe pressure against Cork, has just been brilliant again. Nicky Quaid in sensational form this year once more.
Rod Hegarty, John, come on.
Hegarty, I was going to get there. Oh no, don't worry, I was going to get there. I was getting to midfield first. They'll want to see more from Cian Lynch. I'm sure from the off on Sunday, if that's where Cian ends up playing, depending on Darragh's fitness, you could see Cian line out at centre forward. Of course, Cathal O'Neill had a storming game at midfield, and wherever Cathal turned up against against Cork as well. So his form is good. Will O'Donoghue will want a big game. You can be sure of that. When Limerick were in desperate trouble against Cork, it was probably Will that stood up on the most in those early battles. Mentioned Gerard Hegarty, Tom. Garrod's actually looking more dangerous when he's in around the full forward line at the moment, which is an interesting ploy we hadn't seen from Limerick in a long time.
Yeah.
Garrod was usually used in the half forward line and moving backwards rather than moving forward. And
very well my point.
I seem to remember it was the early stages of the Munster Hurling League in 2018 where Garrod against Clare, funny enough, was wandering towards Conor Cleary an awful lot. I remember talking to a good few people after that game, was asking would we see more of it, because it's certainly a threat. I believe Gerard Hegarty 1-on-1. We saw that against in Ennis this year, and it was something Limerick went back to from something they tried years ago. But his form has been astonishing. It's great to see Gerard at the fullest of his game, with more to bring as well, I'm sure. And we've already mentioned Aaron Gillan and Shamie Flanagan. Tom Morrissey, again, improving with each game that he's playing. Didn't have it, was far from his best out in Ennis. Improved against Tipperary and improved against Cork the last day out as well. So look, that's what I'm saying, Tom. There isn't a huge amount of wrong with what we've seen from Limerick and Munster this year, but the reality is, Tom, Munster's very, very difficult. You see over last year in particular, what was it? A couple of points win over Waterford, very, very tight game. Lost to Clare, drew with Tip, and a 1-point win over Cork, and you're into Munster final. You'll be Clare by a point. So Limerick have, but more often than not, come out the better of those tight games in Munster over the last number of years. That isn't always going to be the case, as we mentioned, but for the moment, you're not going to back against this Limerick team, figuring out whatever they have to figure out in the aftermath of that Cork game. But I'll say it, Tom, and I'll say it again, and I'll continue to say it as long as anyone's around listening. You'll have to score more than 2 goals to beat Limerick. Cork did that, and then we're not going to get into the wherewithals of that. They could have had plenty more on top of the Cork. Can Waterford do that to this Limerick team? Only time will tell. But what Limerick are doing, and more so than what we've seen in the last number of years, we've seen them outscore teams with points after points after points. Limerick are offering a real goal threat. They're not going through the hands as much. They're trying to deliver that ball that bit earlier. It's been consistent in all 3 games, and they're getting some joy from it. I know 2 of the goals against Cork were turnovers, but you have to have players up the field to have turnovers, Tom. And Limerick just they look lethal in front of goal at the moment. Outside of that result against Cork, they do look like a big goal scoring threat. And if the Limerick can get 2 or 3 goals against Waterford, I only see one result.
Yeah, I think it was 3 goals against Clare, 2 against Tipperary, and obviously 3 last day. So that's certainly a very consistent run of green flags. And you're right. I think if that continues, the Limerick are very hard stopped. There's not often they get outscored in terms of white flags. Now I know no 2 games are the same, but I think if Limerick can shore it up a bit more at the back, and their defence, a defence is a great platform for an offense. So obviously, if Limerick start winning those long puckouts, as Waterford will throw a fair amount of them down there. If Limerick start winning those, they're going to have more opportunities in attack. And obviously, if their efficiency is decent on the day, there's no reason why Limerick can't get there. Just John, to mention that Limerick's record against Waterford, I think you said a minute ago that kind of easily goes out the window. But Limerick, let's be real here. They have had a very good record against Waterford. Now, last year they squeaked over the line. Gerard Hegarty sent off maybe late in the third quarter, I think it was. Got over the line. Maybe Waterford shot themselves in the foot. But I suppose the games we've seen before that, and Limerick, I think, was 2 points in the 2 Gaelic rounds the year before. 2 late Waterford goals probably kind of embellished their performance a bit. Before that, I can't remember when Limerick last beat Waterford. I don't have it to hand.
It was 2020 Munster final, or Munster, what ended up in the COVID Munster final. Yeah,
that's last time. No, last time Waterford beat Limerick.
Well, last time Waterford beat Limerick, Tom, I think you could go back.
It's before John Keogh's time,
2009-10, I'd say, if not maybe 11-12. But I don't have that to hand.
Yeah,
and there'd been a bit of a bogey team for Limerick in the years up. Paul Flynn, I certainly remember always seemed to score, and we're going to talk about 07, I know.
Yes.
In a moment or two. But yeah, Waterford Raw was, I'm trying to think, was it when Donal O'Grady was in charge? Limerick and Waterford had a great game in Thurles. Donal O'Grady's first time in charge of Limerick. The Cork Donal O'Grady, obviously, with Limerick Donal O'Grady involved in the backroom team as it is now as a selector and coach. Yeah, I think it was Kevin Downs' year. I think I remember that year.
Beating a point, that'd be 2011?
2010, 11, around then,
Yeah.
They've been epic battles over the years, Tom. You know, Waterford have struggled to beat Limerick. I certainly remember in was it 2021 All-Ireland semi-final where Waterford hit out Limerick with everything in the opening quarter, absolutely everything. It was a
And then Limerick then
huge
called for the
effort.
water break, timeout.
Yeah, water break, and it was level, I think, or Limerick were a point ahead, or
Yeah, I
Waterford
think
were
it
a
was
point ahead.
6-5 or
Very,
7-6.
very, very tight.
Yeah.
And it was a case of Waterford were gassed, and that was that.
Mm.
Now, very different since then. It's been 2 tight games. You mentioned 22 at the Gaelic grounds, 2 late goals, sloppy goals from Limerick's point of view, brought Waterford back into it. But before that, you're looking at 2020, Munster final, All-Ireland final. Waterford actually in the opening stages of the All-Ireland final in 2020 had a couple of goal chances they weren't able to take. And Limerick ran out resounding winners in the end, just completely bossed the game after that. Similar story in Munster. It was tight enough in very bizarre circumstances, obviously, with no fans. And, you know, 2019, Limerick had a huge win in Walsh Park.
Yeah. I think Waterford were more than a bit all over the place that season.
They absolutely were, yeah. And then in 2018, I'm fairly sure Limerick beat Waterford as well at the 2 Gaelic grounds.
Shane Dowling got something like 13 or 14 points.
Yeah, it was tight enough. It wasn't it wasn't a straightforward game for Limerick, if I remember that. And outside of that, can't remember too many meetings in the intervening years before that. But you know, it's a burgeoning rivalry. You know, there's. I'll go back to it, Tom. You know, it's Munster Hurling Championship. There just is no straightforward game, and they've shown. Although Limerick have had the benefit of the victories since the round robin began, and Waterford's form in the round robin, as we know, only too well has been wretched since its inception. But they've turned the corner this year, and they're very much in with a chance, you know, of making that first Munster final since what was there in 2020, and you know, Limerick again. I'll say it have to be at their. Maybe not their very, very best, but they'll have to put in a huge performance, a dogged performance. It could be very, very similar to the game against Cork last year, where Limerick did squeeze out by a point. Although again, concession of a sloppy enough goal brought Cork back into the game. Thankfully, from our point of view, Cork weren't able to follow on like they did a couple of weeks ago in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, and Limerick got the result and into the Munster final as a result. But you know, it's a really exciting game, Tom. But I'll go back to it. Limerick have their fate in their own hands, and if you offer John Keogh that before, you know, the championship started with away games in Ennis and Cork, I'm sure he would have bitten your hand off for it.
Yeah, well, you've mentioned it there once or twice, and I've mentioned it too. 2007, Limerick lost to Dan Shanahan inspired Waterford in the Munster final, but revenge, I think, was a bit sweeter on the Joneses Road in Dublin. So we'll just have a look at one of the goals from that day. Limerick hitting 5, and this was one of the best ones, I suppose, from Andrew O'Shaughnessy.
Broken down there, Flynn trying to take it up. Instead, it's his man who gets it away, and a very good clearance out of danger by Damien Rail. Back once again by Declan Prendergast. Good block down. Michael Brown returns it again. Angling it across towards O'Shaughnessy, trying to get the better again of Aidan Carney here. Great move. O'Shaughnessy trying to avoid the hoop. What a goal! What a start by Limerick! Andrew O'Shaughnessy is unstoppable.
Yes, unstoppable he was. Yeah, Andrew O'Shaughnessy helped himself to 2 goals that day. Limerick getting 5, reaching the 2007 Munster or All Ireland final, I should say. John, memories of that game, I suppose it was a memory that people clung on to for a long time, maybe even as far as 2018, and then eventually it was kind of maybe pushed back into the history books. But geez, that was a special afternoon in Croke Park.
It was, Tom, mainly because Limerick's record at Croke Park up, you know, before that and since then isn't exactly one you'd be proud of for a very, very long time. You know, 1973, outside of the 1940s. You know, Limerick's, although semi-final victories, but they struggled to a lot of them. I'm sure semi-final victories don't mean anything really outside of maybe this one, because we've nothing else after it really for a long time. Memories of the day. It was just, you know, I wasn't at the game, as it turned out. I was watching it at home. I tell you, I wasn't in the best of health at the time, but I was at the Munster final that year where Waterford were the better team, and Dan Shanahan hat trick, I think, was the highlights. If you
Kind of
want
ran
to
away
call
with
that.
it, didn't they? They kind of just
They did,
lay it on.
yeah. It was a tighter game than the scoreline suggested from memory. Limerick were good that year. Obviously, they were good that year. They made the All Ireland final. That's a silly statement out of me, but Limerick were good that day. The goals will always, Tom, win games. Goals will win you games. It's the old adage, and it always rings true. But you know, it was tighter than that scoreline suggests. So although Waterford were rightly big favourites to beat Limerick in that semi-final, Limerick had enough in them. They had a big win, as we were talking before we started recording. You were mentioning a big win they had over Clare in the quarter final.
Yeah.
You know, and with minimal fuss as well, so that they'd come through the back door and gained a bit of confidence with Richie Venice, of course, at the helm, and the famous quote that we scored 5 and then the man scored none in the immediate aftermath of the final whistle. But yeah, that day Limerick were outstanding. You know, Shaughnessy was on fire. Donny Ryan had a day of days. And Brian Begley believed that's a full forward line that they scored the 5 goals down out the field. Ollie Moore was outstanding at centre forward. Mike Fitz had a great year. Of course, Mike Fitz from Doon, Mike Fitzgerald. You know, the players all over the park really hitting
Kevin
their straps.
Don O'Grady. I'm just
the likes of and you the likes of Peter Lawler, Stephen Lucy, Brian Geary, Mark Foley. You know, plenty
Damien
of
Rail
players.
was actually in the clip there as well.
In the clip there, and of course Mike O'Brien, bangers, was you know, a great stalwart of Limerick hurling. So you had players that actually had great careers for Limerick. In a lot of ways, maybe that game was their pinnacle, which is a sad thing to say because lack of silverware outside of the group that won the 21s. But just talking about Andrew O'Shaughnessy, I've only seen it a couple of times since, Tom. Aaron Glenn has kind of got there with Limerick fans. Gerard Hegarty is there as well of the current crop. But I think only Joe Canning it was Joe Canning was the only player I'd seen in my lifetime following on from Andrew O'Shaughnessy. The excitement when Andrew O'Shaughnessy got the ball in his hand in Limerick fans, it was the first time I'd experienced it.
You could hear it there, you can hear it in that clip.
You can hear exactly in that clip.
That
was commonplace from when Andrew O'Shaughnessy was in school in St. Coleman's, winning Harty Cups, to when he came through with the Limerick underage teams, and obviously the teams that won 3 in a row, and onto senior level as well. It was just that level of excitement. You knew something was going to happen, and invariably the ball ended up in the back of the net. Just a stunning performer on his day. And yeah, great memories of that win. I remember being in the Patricksville area that night, and a few sociables in the now reopened Cuchulainn with the manager at the time. And just to say we had a good night, Tom, would be putting it fairly mildly. No, right. It was just, there were great times to be a Limerick fan, Tom, because you know, we didn't have much, you know, and it was that year really. You had such an epic year. You had the trilogy with Tip. You know, you had the Munster final defeat to Waterford, come back, you win over Clare to beat Waterford. And then, yeah, Kilkenny blitzed us early on, no question. Of course, it was Seamus Hickey's first year as a Limerick hurler, of course, and I think he was the only one, fairly sure he was the only one that ended up winning All Ireland in 2018. He was only about 18, 19 at the time.
Yeah, he got Young Hurler of the Year.
He did get Young Hurler of the Year that year, and he learned a harsh lesson against Eddie Brennan, the All Ireland final too, which, you know, Eddie Brennan did fair bit of damage in all those All Ireland wins. For Kilkenny, of course, it was their 4th All Ireland in a row. Am I right in saying, or did they win 09?
In 2007? Sorry,
2007 was their. Yeah, sorry, I'm wrong in that.
2007 was their 2nd or 3rd.
And 9 that been their last. You know, it was. You could even see back then that Kilkenny team were awesome. But Limerick, you know, rallied in that game. And again, Ollie Moore into the fore. He had a great year at centre forward. You know, in the trilogy against Tip as well, outstanding hurler, of course. In his time, and you know, it was a really great time to be a Limerick fan, because we were starved of success. We had the 3 in a row in 2000, 2001 and 2002 of the under-21 success. It didn't transfer to senior. The proof is in the pudding with that one All-Ireland appearance, albeit in defeat, you know, but some great players in that Limerick team. You know, you'd Brian Murray in goals. I can name the team, I'd say nearly. Damien Rail, Stephen Lucy, Seamus Hickey. You'd Peter Lawler, Brian Geary, Mark Foley. You'd Mike O'Brien and Donald O'Grady midfield. Mike Fitzgerald, Ollie Moore, struggling for left half forward. That'll annoy me. And then you'd Andrew O'Shaughnessy, Brian Begley, and Donny Ryan in the full forward line, that left half forward will haunt me. I think
Sean O'Connor, I think, is the one you're missing.
O'Connor, you'd a revolving one of Sean O'Connor, Kevin Tobin, Pat Tobin, Niall Moran. They were all around that team as well.
We're after naming nearly all the subs. Yeah, Mark O'Riordan came on.
Yeah, Mark O'Razor as well. Yeah.
Kevin Tobin.
You know, and that it's so easily rattled off because that's the team we had in that year. And that trilogy, Tom, I mean, I remember writing a piece in it for the Limerick Leader last year when Limerick played Tip in that before that draw. And I remember doing pieces on it before. That trilogy, for a lot of Limerick fans, you know, was everything that year. The Waterford win was amazing, but that trilogy, we hadn't beaten Tip in a long time. You know, they'd gotten the better of us in the 2001 Munster final as well, Tipperary. So you were waiting around 6 years. There wasn't much of a win for Limerick in Munster in those times. You know,
I don't think Limerick had won a game in Munster.
I don't think they did. Yeah, up to 07. You know, so that's important. You see the great scenes. And a lashing raining day in the Gaelic grounds, pitch invasions back when there was no such thing as pitch invasions. There was always a thing as pitch invasions. But you know, I remember Niall Moran getting the score in extra time. Limerick won by a few points in the end. I think they just willed it over the bar, and you know, there were great times to be a Limerick fan. Town was hopping. I remember that after those two games, even with the weather. You know, and things like that led on 07 to 13 to winning Munster in 2013. What happened in 07, what happened in 2013 wouldn't have happened without 07, I don't think. And likewise, what happened in 2013, you know, we wouldn't have had everything that followed without what happened in 2013 as well. So although there wasn't a huge amount of silverware, certainly in 07, it will be one of the years, looking back in my old age, which isn't too far maybe ahead of me, but you know, looking back, 2007 hurling year, albeit again with a defeat in both Munster and All Ireland finals, it'll be well etched as much as 2018 to whatever this senior team calls it a day. You know, it was a great year, and that for me, that semi-final win, because it gave you hope, Tom. You'd believe maybe to a point after the trilogy games. But the Waterford win gave you real hope that Limerick hurling was somewhere again, you know. And
near enough to the top level,
we had a couple of bad years after that. No point saying we didn't. We obviously had the strike, the Justin McCarthy scenario, all that stuff. But 2007, that group of players will always hold a special place for me.
Yeah, very good. Now, I don't think if Limerick score 5 goals the weekend, there's a fair chance they'll win. But if they only I say, because Limerick scored 5-11 that day, if they only score 11 points with it, I don't know. I don't think 26 will win it, but that'll tell you how the game indeed has evolved. You could even see it in that clip there, the type of ball that was being played. Even the hurleys look long, even though that's not a million years ago. But the game certainly has moved on and evolved. But some fantastic memories indeed at that time. Yeah, I do remember watching it myself on TV at the time, and I couldn't get a ticket for a final. I suppose very hard for 13-year-olds back then when social media wasn't around, and I didn't really know many people connected with around the place to be knocking on doors for a ticket. But unfortunately, we had to watch Eddie Brennan and the lads get the better of Limerick in the subsequent final in early September. Right, John, we'll move on, I think, now to it's plenty on the hurling. We'll just move on now towards Gaelic football. Yourself and myself were in situ last Saturday as Limerick senior footballers ended 364 days, John. I think that's my calculation anyway, without a victory of any shape or form. But to be fair, richly deserved 210 to 8 points victory over Offaly, and you could sense the relief maybe from everyone connected with Limerick there. It was just, finally, we've won again.
Yeah, Tom, it was. It was great to see, because the people involved within Limerick Gaelic football, they're, you know, it's very difficult at times for them, given what's happening with the senior hurling team over the last number of years, to even try and come close to it is not nigh on impossible, you know. So it's very difficult to keep when one side of the house is so successful. You know, the football, albeit a couple of years where they got, you know, back winning in Munster, you know, and obviously up to Division 2 last year in the league. The great work that Billy Lee has done, and we had a tough year last year. Obviously, we should have been in Tailteann Cup knockout stages. It didn't happen, or Tailteann Cup semi-final. It didn't happen.
Yeah, should have got to Croke Park.
You know, they should have got to Croke Park. Exactly that. You know, there They were in Croke Park the year before in the league final against Louth, losing. But there had been steps, and then obviously a couple of backward steps the last 2 years. So that win for Jimmy Lee and his backroom team and the players that are lining out for Limerick, no matter what else that happens this year, that's a huge, huge victory for Limerick football, Tom. Simply because a year is a long, long time to be waiting for a victory, and plenty of games in between that time too, For me, just on the game itself quickly, I thought, it was a very even opening quarter. I think we both, what was it, 5-5 at halftime?
Yeah.
It was only when Limerick actually, I know that the breeze was going into the scoreboard corner in McNeville Park, and Limerick had whatever way it was going with them. I think it was just Limerick actually started to believe they could win the game, and they'd got 8-6 ahead. They were by far the better team at that stage of the game, but by the time Emmett Richter buried his first goal, there was only one winner after that then, and they emphasised it late on with a second goal as well, which was a superb counter-attack. It was great. I know Offaly had pushed up, but the speed at Limerick, pushed forward and moved forward, and the way they worked that goal was really, really great to see. And, it's a big, big win, Tom. You don't know what's coming. They're playing London this weekend. You don't know
next weekend,
how big, next weekend, how big that victory could become for this group. We've been waiting for it. They've been close a couple of times. They've got better as the years went on. No point saying they haven't. Obviously, that result to Down was a tough one to take, but I think they knew going up to Down that their chances weren't exactly, in the favourable column. But they regrouped, Tom. That was the big thing. We could kind of see early on from the game that, after they got the first couple of points, fine, but Limerick reacted very, very well. So that was obviously a very big positive for Jimmy Lee and his backroom team. They did, and they played some lovely football. Yeah, they were very, very patient. We knew a good few people around us at the game were getting fairly excited and getting fairly animated with Limerick's, going over and back, being patient with the ball.
They dominated the territory, John. I know we don't
absolutely
have
dominated, in both halves.
Yeah,
in both halves, and then there was an incisive break. That's when they left the pass off. We saw some outstanding scores from Cahill Downs and Barry Coleman, two of the newer players in this panel, which was great to see. And you'd like to Cormac Wolf, who's coming into a bit of form. And when you, Tom, in the final quarter of a game, when you can bring on the talents of Ian Corbett and Danny Neville, you're not doing too bad. Let's be frank about it. With the 15 that started the game. So I thought it was a very, very well managed performance from Jimmy Lee and his backroom team. From a player's point of view, you have to. You're seeing it more and more in every sport. You're seeing it with Munster Rugby at the moment. It's no surprise to see them win the amount of games they've won once they've got all their players back, because you're having finishers come off the bench. It's something that's going to become happening more and more, that maybe even some of your best players are coming on for the last 20 minutes to finish the game. And if a game is tight, they have fresh legs, they have all the talent, have all the abundancy of that, and the skills to boot. So I think it was just so positive. There's, of course, you mentioned a big element of relief in it as well. But to run away with the game, that's what they did in the second half, restricting Offaly to 3 points and scoring. It was a 2-5 themselves. It was a big victory, and should go into the London game with full of confidence next week.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said there. In fairness, the thing I liked as well, I said it to you, Jan, when we were watching it. Josh Ryan obviously is in goals these days, and in fairness to him, he seems to be moving a lot freer these days. I'd say the fitness is getting there, and look, who knows when we'll see him, if we'll see him outfield in the near future. But certainly from a goalkeeping point of view, the way goalkeeping in Gaelic football has evolved, he comes up for kickouts that obviously Offaly were taking. And the phrase I used to use, Jan, was he spooked the Offaly goalkeeper. So the first kick out, or one of the first kick outs, he went up, he won it, and he knocked it down to Limerick player, and Limerick were able to go from there. The next time, I don't think the keeper even looked down to his channel. So for anyone that wasn't there or is maybe not sure what I'm talking about, it's kind of this thing of blocking up a channel, and I think it's what Derry tried, and it blew up in their face against Donegal in the Ulster Championship. But, Josh Ryan is the biggest player on the pitch. He's good in the air. He understands the game very much. He decides, I'm going to contest a kick out here. I think Louth were one of the first counties I saw really doing this as well. So he decides, right, I'll contest this, wins it, and suddenly the Offaly keeper says, well, geez, I can't go down that channel again because biggest man in the pitch is going to win it. So that was, little things like that. They start
tactical nuggets, Tom, that were very positive to see from Limerick. Josh's influence in the game overall from in goals, I think football's gone that way, Tom.
Yeah.
Some teams are overdoing it. I don't think
But
Limerick.
I think you have to use the goalkeeper
You,
in some
you're,
shape or form.
yeah,
You can't leave
but
him
Tom,
inside in the square
if
forever.
you have a guy like Josh, you'd want to use him as much as you can, and he did it twice. The first kick out, as you said, he won the ball. Now, if I was in was it Ian Duffy, the Offaly goalies, if I was in his if I was kicking it out there and I saw Josh Ryan, I'd be going the other side as well. It's just, and it even is spook is the word, and you use it very aptly at the time in the middle of the game. Josh went down a couple of more times. They didn't do it every kick out, which was very interesting for Limerick, but did it on occasion when they were pushing up, they were pressing the Offaly kick out. It was interesting to see.
Posed the question to Offaly, really, didn't it?
It did, and at the other side, Tom, you Tommy Childs on the other side, which isn't exactly an easy prospect for the keeper to kick it out, because if I saw Tommy Giles, I'd be going on the other wing, I'd be going straight down the middle, and that's what Offaly ended up doing a lot of, and Limerick were able to pick up the pieces there too. So very tactically from Limerick, I thought throughout the whole game they managed it very, very well. And Josh, as an example, we saw him coming out trying to put a bit of pace into attacks as well, where there was no danger. There's a big difference in doing it when there's danger. There was one time he did misplace a pass. It was a pass he didn't need to take on.
Yeah.
And imagine Josh is learning in that position as well. So that's.
But I think straight away when that happened, Tony McCarthy, who's playing cornerback, got back onto the line, and then everyone else funneled back. So I suppose they've learned, and I think there was a couple of hiccups in the league with this at different times and at different games. And look, if they're learning and getting better at it, well, we should be all for it. I think it's obviously you don't want to see anyone giving the ball away like he did, but certainly the other guys were switched on enough to say, right, we won't be conceding a goal from here because we'll get back to field. But just the final point on this game, I'm going to talk about the London game now in a second. But the final point in this game is that the breakthrough goal from Emmett Richter. Now, he scored a goal for the 20s last week, which I was told was really, really top class. But the goal that he got. Cahill Downs had scored a mark from a very similar position a few minutes earlier. He had just called another mark, or I think it was Cahill Downs, isn't it? Limerick had certainly a mark, yeah. And it'd be very easy to just have a go at the posts, and if it goes wide or it goes over, sure, that's fine. But he actually decided straight away kick it into the corner. I think it was Brian Ahern maybe took the ball, a couple of hand passes down the end line, and kind of a backdoor cut, as this new phrase is kind of new enough to be. But Limerick came in around the back, worked it to Emmett Richter, and he had the composure to rifle it low, left-footed. I suppose even when you haven't been winning games, you need that bit of impetus, because it's very easy to just have a shot at the post there and we're a point or two up, that's fine. It does, but to actually go for the throw out of Offaly, and mere mind Offaly would have been low enough in confidence themselves. Limerick really went for it, and it was good to see, and it was a lot of the younger players that were involved in that move too.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head, Tom. It's again, I think as the game went on, I said it earlier, Limerick started to believe. So they started to have the confidence to try things like that. We've all year, Tom, and you've seen more Limerick footballers than I have, to be fair. But from what I've seen, they've been static and everything. They've been unsure of what they're doing. And that comes with losing games. They've improved that as the year went on. They certainly weren't that way in Cork. They were unlucky at times in Cork that, a goal, if Limerick had got a goal like we're talking about there, at a certain stage in that game, they may have had belief that maybe there was a shock on the cards here. But exactly that, Tom. Offaly switched off and Limerick were switched on. It does boil down to that. Oh yeah, he scored a mark there a couple of minutes ago. Pretty much the same range. He's going to have a go at that. Limerick moved it quickly, as you said. I think you're right. It was Brian Ahern coming in along the end line, moved the ball back to him at Richter, and it was a great finish. And and it just added to the confidence factor for Limerick footballers from there. And there was only one winner after that, Tom. I'll say it again. And it was no surprise to see Emmett Richter. After a very impressive performance. You mentioned the goal he got with the 20s last week. I mentioned it last week as well, or the week before, even when talking about the starting Tailteann Cup game against Down. The one he got a year ago or so, or just over a year ago now, in the Munster semi-final against Clonmel.
Yeah.
As a 19-year-old.
We've learned he likes.
Tom, the thing with talented players, that they back themselves. There's no surprise for me to see that it was Emmett Richter finishing off those two goals. He's a modern midfielder, Tom. He gets back and he gets forward in equal measures, and is fairly good around in the air as well. Big talent for Limerick. Got a lovely, sweet left foot. He's no problem trying from distance with shots as well. Just want to highlight as well some of the scores. I know I've mentioned it briefly. The 2 points Cahill Downs got, off either foot, I think.
Yep.
Carl Downs, it was a revelation last year, and he's only brought it on. He's had injury issues this year, and last year as well, to be fair, curtailed his involvement with Kildimo Palace Kenry in both codes. We obviously know he's a very, very
he's only
talented
around
hurler as well.
23 years of age.
This is it,
23
yeah.
this year,
22, maybe 23.
He-
Yeah, he was
around a long
21
time
hurlers
that
2
was,
years ago. So I mean, you've to, or 3 years ago, you have to look at these things like Barry Coleman. We've mentioned in passing as well. Younger players on the team, Brian Ahern, making his way in it as well. We've mentioned Emmett Richter, Cormac Wolf. I've mentioned there is
Andrew
talent
Mead,
around.
Andrew Mead off the bench as well.
Andrew Mead off the bench. We've seen
the
other
5 or 6
players.
of those, John, are that's a third of a team there basically.
And that Limerick have needed that. Last year it was Cahill Downs and Barry Coleman and Darren Murray actually made his debut last year in the Tailteann Cup as well, I think. They were the first 3 debutants for something like 5-6 years for Limerick at championship level. I know players that played league and trials, and I think I'm right in that set. Or fairly close to it anyway. So
Yes.
I mean, that's massive. So Carl Downs is improving with every game he's still playing. Barry Coleman the same. Andrew Mead, as you've mentioned. Cormac Wolf, I thought, had a fine game while he was on the field. And it helps the likes then of Killian Maher or Killian Fahy and Paul Maher, the experienced players in defence, Sean O'Dea, when they see that youth around the place as well, it gives them another lift. And that's only for the benefit of Limerick football, Tom. And you could see the enthusiasm when Limerick did manage to get that first goal. That really, I think it put them 5 points clear, and they never looked in danger of losing that game from there. And that was the biggest thing, Tom. There was enthusiasm with everything Limerick did in the second half, and I think that belief now will be brought into the London game as we're going to talk about now.
Yeah. Well, certainly not getting into the permutations of the Tailteann Cup, but by my calculations, if Limerick win, they're definitely through in second. If they draw, they'll finish third, but they'll be through as well. It's 3 of the 4 best third place teams. If you reiterating that point, but even I think if Limerick lose narrowly, not that they'll be aiming for that, but if they have to lose narrowly, given there's been some very, very one-sided games in the competition, there's a good chance Limerick will still come through in third. So that's. It's positive. It's in their own hands to obviously come second and get a home prelim quarterfinal. So we'll see, maybe against New York. Who knows? We'll see how that one fares out. But the venue yet to be decided for that one. I've talked to Dublin, but I'm sure Limerick GA and NED, the GA nationally, will confirm that in due course. It's supposed to be on the bank holiday, Saturday or Sunday, which is the 1st and 2nd of May. So we'll see on that fixture. But John, it's
June time.
For June, yes, I'm going back in time. But is it a good opportunity now? London beaten heavily by Down. They did themselves beat Offaly quite well. So Down have the Group 1. Offaly are out. They're playing each other in effectively a dead rubber. But good chance for Limerick. Now, obviously, London, I don't think have played them. Limerick haven't played London in any championship game for donkey's years, I'd imagine.
Good few league games, all right.
Plenty of league games in Rice Slipper in Limerick. I think they played them in UL actually a couple of years ago on the AstroTurf. So, hard to know what to expect from London. Is kind of a bit of a revolving door there as well. But certainly, if you're going on the farm lines, this should be a very, very tight game.
It should be, Tom. Yeah, and that's all you can do. You take Down out of the equation. I think you have 3 relatively even teams left then between Limerick, London and Offaly, but maybe Limerick and London are probably on the same level at the moment, given the score lines in those 2 games. London, they make strides, Tom, as you said, like a revolving door, but they have made strides. They are improving with each year that goes by. The Offaly result 100% proved that. Beating a team in the division above you league-wise is a huge achievement for any team by 14 points. But for any team, Tom, not alone a team, of London stature, to do it by that distance and that margin shows a lot of things are being done right in London at the moment. They are, of course, still in unknown quantity, given the fact Limerick haven't played them in 3 years. I think it'll be, and as you said, that game, I remember well, being on the AstroTurf. It might be even longer than that, even. But
that was the last time. That's gone back to 2017. They played them in UL, but I think they would have played in the 2020 league. I'd say Limerick, when Limerick ended up winning the league, they would have played in the league there. I'm sure Limerick beat them as well. That might have been in Rice Slip itself, but
it could have been.
Yeah.
But look,
both teams have very much changed since then.
Yeah, very absolutely. Much. Yeah, probably London more than Limerick in a way. Limerick would have had a good few of the same players. Yeah, Tom. Look, the reality is that Limerick will be pushing to win that game. Should, as I said earlier, go in full of confidence into it, and with that advantage of having a home prelim as the carrot, for either team from London's point of view, just as much. If they can do that and have someone heading over to Ruislip, they'll fancy a shock there. But yeah, Limerick will be gunning for that win.
Yeah, certainly. So we'll see what way the fixture falls. It's a neutral game as the competition rules state, but I'm told it will definitely be in Ireland anyway. We won't be heading off to England to play that one. So we'll see what way it comes up. John, the Limerick under-17 footballers, they obviously had a disappointing campaign results-wise anyway in the Munster series, but thankfully there's a new tiered system to the Inter-County Minor Championships, and they're in Tier 3, which is fine. They went to Connacht Centre of Excellence and had a very good win over Fermanagh. So in fairness to Ger O'Connor, he's obviously rallied the boys around, and they've and they are of course boys. We must remember that he's rallied them around, and a very good win over Fermanagh.
Brilliant win, Tom. Yeah, goes back to what we continue to say, that the more games these players play, the more comfortable they feel in the jersey, the more comfortable they are in the surroundings. And for Limerick, we don't know the levels of, Fermanagh are obviously in a Tier 3 competition as well. That's not Limerick's problem. Limerick can only go out and beat who they did, and they did so in a very convincing manner. So you can imagine the boost in confidence. We're talking about the senior footballers boosting confidence with a big win over Offaly. Imagine those young lads now after that excellent victory over Fermanagh heading into their next game. It's just a huge one. And for Ger O'Connor as well, Tom, it was a tough year in the Munster Championship for them. In phase 1 of Munster, you lose 3 games, you're 3 games in it. Confidence is bound to be low, but as you said, they've regrouped, and they're in. They've done well, to regroup. Number one, I'm sure, with young lads being young lads, it can be a difficult task to bring these lads, to boost them purely confidence wise, let alone skills wise, which are constantly working on, and tactics wise, which are constantly working on. And that's exactly what's happened. Clearly, they've come on, no matter what happens again in the rest of this campaign for them in that competition, they have that one to hang their hat on, heading in to some of them being minor next year again, and some of them being 20s next year, or whatever else their journey is. So that's a big one. But for Ger O'Connor and his management team, I'm sure there was a bit of a sigh of relief as well to try and that the result speaks for itself. We're after pulling this one out, so they can concentrate now with maybe a bit more freedom into the next game of that competition.
Yeah, 3-11 to 8 winners over Fermanagh. And just going to show you the team photo there, John. It's not the colours we're used to seeing Limerick in now. It's obviously the alternate jersey, and obviously Fermanagh were green too. I don't know now. My fashion sense mightn't be the greatest, but I'm not sure. I prefer the green now, and I also think Limerick's second kit should be white, but maybe that's just me. But credit to the lads anyway on their victory. I did subsequently, John, we were talking beforehand, I didn't have the draw. I suppose that some fixtures, John, are secrets in the GA, but I've made my inquiries around the place, and Limerick are into the quarter-final of this Tier 3 competition, and they'll be facing the men from the Moran County. That's down, of course, and it's I think it's looking like it's going to be on in Dublin. So we shall try and confirm that for people when they have it, but it's a bit up in the air. I think originally it was fixed for Kilcock, and it looks like maybe now it's going to be on in Grange Gorman in Dublin City. So we'll let you know when that one is on. So best of luck to the lads in All-Ireland quarter-final, and hopefully they can match the 20s in terms of reaching the last 4 of their national competition. So that's the minor footballers. We'll be back in action, I'm sure, quite soon. John, the Masters footballers, now we were mentioning London, mentioning Ruislip. The lads were good. With 2 of us are make use of Liam Mulcahy as a physio, but obviously he's still doing a bit of playing himself, and the rest of the lads involved there, they're heading off to London after a win over Clare in round 1. So a nice little trip across the water for them for round 2 of the Masters competition.
It's brilliant, Tom. Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic that that group of players who won the Tier 5 competition last year, the Spirit Cup, that they're getting that trip away to London. I know, talking to a good few of them there in the last few weeks, I've met them at different things. They're certainly looking forward to it, Tom. The great start to the season with that win over Clare and Clarecastle, the Friday evening game a couple of weeks ago. I'm sure there'll be plenty of crack in the in the aftermath of Saturday's game in Ruislip, you can be sure. But the lads are going over to get a win, and that's what they're focusing on. Yeah, great trip and great to meet up with the Limerick diaspora and the Irish diaspora in general when they do get over there. I'm sure it'll be a fantastic occasion. But at the end of the day, this Limerick team, the over 40s Masters team, are representing Limerick in their county in a different country, and that's a huge sense of pride for this group of players. And Tom, a lot of these over 40s competitions in every code are taken with a little bit of fun and game element about it. Yeah, I'm sure there's an element of this of that with this group as well. But having seen them up close, having seen training, having seen matches last year, I wasn't at that Clarecastle game, or that game in Clarecastle, I should say. I know how seriously this group of players and management take the games and the competition. There wouldn't have been an All-Ireland final last year, Tom, at any grade without that seriousness, so it's just fantastic to see. In a trip to London, you can only imagine now how if it was me, for argument's sake, I could only imagine how proud I'd be to represent Limerick on what is effectively an international stage. And you just want to wish all the best of luck to Anthony and the lads, Anthony O'Connor, the manager, and the lads ahead of this Saturday's game, because at the end of the day, Tom, they're lads that in some cases have played inter-county football with Limerick, like say Micheál Reedy and them. Some lads that are still playing football with their clubs. Some are still playing different codes with their clubs and so it's fantastic that they've banded together. I'm sure Jack and Matt, having watching the podcast last year, when we weren't on it, spoke to Liam and spoke to a good few of the lads involved over time, on their route to the All-Ireland victory last year. And, we'll only wish them the best of luck. And hopefully as the season goes on, we're in a position to talk to them again when they're heading to the latter stages of competition once more.
Yeah, an exciting trip for the lads, I'm sure, this Saturday in Ruislip, a 1 p.m. start for round 2. After that emphatic win over Clare, they'll have their first home game on the 8th of June against Waterford, and then they'll conclude the group with games away to Cork, at home to Mayo, and then a final group game, which is round 6, at home to Kerry. So best wishes to all involved with that one. John, there was a bit of silverware annexed by the ladies footballers last weekend, the Munster Senior B title. A good win for Sean Kiley and co. Nice that the ladies now have a bit of silverware, because they've fallen short narrowly, it must be said, in the All-Ireland Junior final last year, the league earlier in the spring. Nice to get into a final and get that win. So I think they'll take a bit of pride in this, and I suppose a bit of confidence too.
Yeah, absolutely, Tom. 22 league loss as well to Offaly and Burr. League loss this year in Burr, albeit to Carlow, and of course the All-Ireland final last year to Down. Yeah, it's just a confidence booster. We've mentioned it a few weeks ago, Tom, what this competition could be for Limerick. It was no surprise as the further they gotten, as the stronger team came out, while being mixed and matched as well. But it's a huge confidence boost heading into the All-Ireland Junior Championship for Sean Kiley and Mike Willigan's side. No point saying otherwise. You have to take confidence from performances that they've shown throughout this competition. Yeah, it's not but you wouldn't be expecting Limerick to be competing with the likes of Cork and Kerry in that A Championship either. So massive congrats to the girls and to Sean and Mike for bringing that silverware in. It will be seen from them, no doubt about it, where their goal lies this year is in an All-Ireland title. And it'll be of no consequence to them once that silverware isn't, on the mantelpiece come end of year as well. They have a long, hard road. The Junior Championship, Tom, is a very, very difficult one to win. As we both know, we've seen enough of it over the last few years, so there's plenty of big teams that Limerick have to come across in that yet. But no doubt they'll have taken a huge lift from beating Cork last weekend.
Yeah, certainly. I think the confidence of winning a final, and it kind of proved to be a tight game. I think Limerick were fastest from the traps, but I think Cork kind of reeled them in a bit in the second half. But Limerick managed to I suppose professionally see it out and get the win. So hopefully that is a sign of things to come later in the summer. Just to mention as well, there was a couple of retirements from the inter-county game on the ladies football front this week. Two familiar faces, of course, for those involved in those following Limerick ladies football there. You can see them on screen there, but anyone listening, it's Alva Quaid and Amy Ryan who've announced their intercounty retirements, and Limerick ladies football would like to wish them both, would like to thank them for their joyous and incredible years they gave to their county, and they have certainly represented the jersey with pride. Amy, a member of the 2018 All-Ireland winning panel, and Alva was more than a match for many an attacker last season in Limerick's run to the final. But the two great servants, it must be said. John, I think you're going to echo those sentiments, but never great to see anyone moving away from the intercounty game. But I suppose we must tip our hats to these two. I think I've said it to Matt before. The demands on intercounty players and across all codes is huge, but the female side of a thing, I know Amy and Alva both have children as well. There's a lot of commitment there. They probably don't get remunerated with expenses or other bits and bobs that a lot of their male counterparts do. So we really must commend them for their service to the Green of Limerick.
Yeah, two great careers, Tom. Both of course, I never saying Amy in 2018, but both played in last year's final defeat to Down as well. Alva just starting off a long career with Limerick. Saw many highs and saw many lows as well. And as you said, Amy, a vital member of the team that won All-Ireland victory in 2018. Just, as you said, echo your comments and Limerick ladies football comments. Two great servants to Limerick, and will be huge losses to the squad, and to Limerick ladies intercounty football going forward.
Yeah, I think some of the defences will be spared. Amy Ryan's a pacey runs towards goal, so that's the defence outside of Limerick. Of course, I'm sure we'll probably see her in club action as well with Ula in due course. John, just moving finally now, and last but definitely not least, the Limerick Camogie sides, plural that is, of course, they're back in championship action, or well, I suppose not back, but they're into championship action this weekend, starting with the junior side. Big weekend, John. I'll just bring the fixtures up on screen there. The Mayo are the opponents for the junior side. We did mention these games briefly last week. And Kilkenny, the senior opposition. So a doubleheader in McNeville Park this Saturday afternoon for those ones. 2 p.m. for the juniors, 4 p.m. for the seniors. And I suppose, John, looking at the juniors, they got to the league final, didn't go their way. I suppose they'll want to right that wrong, and maybe Dave Deedy, will have had a bit of time to work on different bits and pieces. So I suppose a good opportunity for them with a home game against Mayo to start.
Yeah, it is, Tom. Bit of disappointment, obviously, in that league final, but they're progressing on an upward curve under Dave Deedy and his backroom team. Did a good run in this competition last year, getting to knockout stages. Unfortunately, up in Dublin, it was Dublin or Kildare, I can't remember which, but they lost out. Yeah, the last out was at it. They were lost out to Roscommon, I think it was, in the knockout stages of the All-Ireland Premier Junior Championship last year. It was on the same day as the Limerick All-Ireland Senior Hurling semi-final as well, if I remember correctly. Yeah, making great strides. Is Dave Deedy and his team, and I said it, Tom, I'll continue to say it, everyone is pushing in the right direction in Limerick Camogie, and that's the first time in a long time that we've seen that over last year and this year in particular, and that's the biggest thing that can come out of what's happening at the moment. You're seeing the 16s improving, minors improving, juniors improving. No question, the seniors improving as well. So, they've a chance to get off on the right foot against Mayo on Saturday afternoon in Rackeel and McNeville. It has the potential to be a very good year for this team as well. A lot of youth on that team mixed in with a lot of experience, and more importantly than all of that, plenty of talent in there to choose from Dave Deedy's point of view as well. So absolutely, they can get off to a winning start with a big performance against Mayo.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, Mayo, I think were in the division below in the league last year. I can't recall fully where they landed on it, but have been trying to grow the game. I'm sure it's a tricky one in Mayo in terms of ladies football will be the dominant code. But we wish Dave and his charges the very best at 2 p.m. Later, obviously, John, as I mentioned there, 4 p.m. start for the senior side. Now, they'll be up against this. I don't think we'll sugarcoat it any other way. They're playing against Kilkenny, who are obviously one of the aristocrats of Camogie in this country. And I suppose part of the big three, as it has been for, maybe well over 10 years now. They're beaten, I think, in the quarterfinal of this championship last year. But invariably, Kilkenny get out of this group quite easily. they get into the knockouts and they do their business from there. But obviously they were beaten last year with the way the draw worked out. They played Cork in the quarter final, and were came out the wrong side of it. But a tough test here, John, for Joe Quaid and co. But maybe we've seen a bit of a blueprint in the Waterford game that defensively Limerick are moving in the right direction.
Yeah, the blueprint in the Wexford game before that as well, Tom, where they beat the team that, finished top of the group in what was a shock. But, yeah, absolutely. Kilkenny is a big test for this team. I know things have been going very, very well in the lead up to this, and that's not putting any, mocker on this team. That they're very much up against the Kilkenny team that probably have different expectations than Limerick, but by the end of season. But again, losing to Waterford in the Munster Championship, you mentioned the game. We were both there. It was it was a case of Limerick on the day, they're up against the All-Ireland finalists, and outside of maybe, two, three Waterford players, they were the difference. Limerick had chances they weren't able to take, and it was a very tough conditions in the Gaelic grounds before the Limerick Tipperary senior hurling game. But yeah, they'll take a huge amount of confidence from the Wexford win, and certainly for large aspects of the performance, talking to Joe Quaid after the game, he was very, very pleased about. So, I think they will be coming into this game, no one giving them a chance, Tom, which suits them down to the ground. Can they come out with a victory? It'll be a very, very difficult task, no question about that. But I think they've seen enough so far since Joe Quaid has come back into the fold as Limerick manager. I think they've seen plenty of positives with each step they've taken. And yeah, I'm not going to say for 1 second that Kilkenny aren't strong favourites, but Limerick will be quietly confident that they can maybe cause an upset, albeit they'll be going in as massive underdogs.
Yeah, just to bring people up to speed with the group that is there. They're playing Kilkenny, obviously, as we said. So that's Limerick and Kilkenny. Also this weekend you have Tipperary versus Waterford, and you have Antrim versus Derry. So if you were to kind of rank those teams, John, based on what we know and what we've seen in the league, Limerick would realistically probably be fourth. Waterford contested the All-Ireland final last year. Tipperary have been thereabouts in the top four. They're probably the kind of fourth or fifth team in Ireland for a good number of years now as well. Antrim and Derry probably on their day. Limerick are better than the two of them. I think they were beaten by Antrim when they were short a number of bodies in the league, but they got destroyed Derry really here in Kilmallock in the league game as well. So realistically, Limerick are probably fourth. They need now to be in the top three. So they're going to have to probably beat Antrim and Derry and then pick off another results in there as well, whether it be maybe most likely against Tipperary or Waterford. And I'm not trying to write off this weekend's tie, but look, let's be realistic here. Kilkenny, very, very consistent over a long period. Some of the best Camogie players in the country at their disposal. But that has to be the aim, John, for Limerick.
Yeah, it does.
Try and get third in this group.
Getting third in the group has to be the finishing the top three in whatever format that comes in. I actually disagree slightly. I think Tipperary are the coming team in this group, and then Camogie in general. I think they've had a very, very good year in the league.
Yeah,
Waterford
their junior team as well has done well last year as well.
Yeah,
always a good sign.
So they've had a couple of years in the wilderness, but I think they're coming on the other side of it. Waterford, we know, we've already seen against Limerick, and obviously the great year they had last year in reaching the All-Ireland final. And maybe, Tom, of those games, maybe actually Saturday. And again, Limerick are underdogs in all three games. I'm not saying that for 1 second, but maybe trying to catch Kilkenny cold. Kilkenny will come into the game, as overwhelming favourites, but it is home advantage, and you've got to make home advantage as your biggest thing. The biggest thing for Limerick, is not worrying about the result. In effect, if you put in a performance they know they're capable of, as they've already shown against the likes of Wexford, they're giving themselves a chance, Tom. And that's that. If they don't finish, in the top three this year, okay, what's next? It would be to finish fourth, and that would be massive progress from what we've seen in the last number of years, because we've seen is relegation playoffs, and that's not where Limerick Camogie wants to be. It's not where Limerick Camogie should be, is taking part in those type of games. But you can only go by what's up next, and Limerick will be firmly focused on Kilkenny. What's on paper will be irrelevant to them, and they'll focus on putting in a performance against Kilkenny and being in the game with 10-15 minutes left. I remember a couple of years ago, I'm not sure if it was a league game or championship game, I apologize for that, where Limerick were running Kilkenny quite close. It was only the last 5 minutes that Kilkenny kind of pulled away. And
It was a league semi-final.
League semi-final, I think I remember watching it on
even,
YouTube.
or the other, yeah.
And and Limerick were a little bit in that game, so that they won't hold any fear, Tom. I think that's what Joe Quaid and his management team have brought in. Well, they've brought in a professional standard in everything they do. They've certainly brought belief to this group of players. The Wexford result shows that, and for large parts of the Waterford performance also show that. That Wexford result in particular showed that they're on an upward turn, and going into Saturday, who knows, Tommy? These games can take on a life of their own very, very quickly. And if Limerick are in that game with 10, 15 minutes left, with hopefully a big crowd in McNeville Park roaring them on, you just don't know what can happen.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. Well, I called them the Aristocrats. Did I mean Aristocats? I don't know. Yeah, I think maybe on that bombshell, it's probably time to bring this to a halt. So just finally to mention the under-16s Limerick Camogie side, they were beaten 3-10 to 7 points by Cork last weekend. Just not to be for the youngsters, but that's a group stage, so I think they have another contest yet to play in that one. Thanks very much, everyone, for tuning and listening, wherever you are tuning in to the Gaelic games over the weekend. We hope you enjoy it. If you're heading to the Gaelic grounds, be sure to get there early and be loud for the Green of Limerick, and hopefully this time next week we'll be talking about Limerick continuing their drive for 5 and indeed maybe in the mix for 6 in terms of Munster Championships. John, thanks for your company as always, and we'll chat to you soon.